Hello, today's video is going to help you understand that really difficult time after a narcissistic relationship or toxic relationship has ended and you are feeling grief-stricken and feel a really deep sense of loss even though that person hasn't died. So after leaving a narcissistic relationship, even whether you've left or whether you have been discarded, survivors are caught in this really heavy emotional tsunami. It's a time of confusion, anger, fear, and also there may be a huge sense of loss. So I'm going to explain how to navigate through this time during this video, and I want you to know that even though it feels really horrible right now, that on the other side of this you can get a very fast recovery. You just need some tools and some guidance of how to navigate this. It's not something you need to be stuck with for a long time. Hello, my name's Sarah and I'm a transformational coach and therapist, and I help people get their lives back after narcissistic abuse way better than it ever was before. So the really confusing thing about this topic is that you've left the relationship or you found yourself on your own and you're sort of coming to terms with the enormity of the situation you found yourself in. And maybe there's an aspect of you now that sort of realises that you're free and you're free to live a life free of abuse. And that brings its own exhilaration and sense of joy that right now I can actually start living my life how I want to. And you can start making decisions about how you want to live your life, and without the fear of being minimised and being abused in the way that you were before. So in some ways it's actually quite an exciting time, but it comes with a lot of mixed feelings. So as well as feeling this, maybe this sense of freedom from a very difficult situation that was harming you, there are also going to be times when you're reflecting on a sense of loss that feels really, really heavy. You may have experienced loss in many different areas of your life. So how can you feel relief and loss at the same time? It doesn't seem possible, does it? And it's because it's really complicated, and that literally is the name of the experience that you're going through. It's called complicated grief. So during this very difficult time, it's essential that you have at your disposal healing tools and protocols that will help you heal these very complex, heavy emotions and these emotional reactions. Or if you don't have anything that you can use for yourself, then certainly enlist the help of a trauma-informed therapist to just so you can take some of these heavy feelings into therapy, because by doing that you're going to be able to process them and get through this phase a lot more quickly. So it's important to allow yourself to feel and experience the pain of your losses. And it is scary and it feels scary, but we mustn't run away from this fact. After narcissistic abuse especially, we have such a heavy feeling of the residues and the memories of betrayals, of violations, invalidations, and feelings of abandonment. And at the same time, there's this sort of feeling of grief about all that we thought we had, we have now lost. And we may have suffered many losses in lots of different areas of our life. Some of it is at an emotional cost, some of it physical and financial and spiritually as well. So it's an incredibly heavy emotional burden. And the question still remains, doesn't it? Why would we want to grieve someone who hasn't actually died and who has treated us so badly? It doesn't seem to make any sense, does it? So at this time you may also realise that the hopes and dreams that you had for the relationship were literally just dreams and figments of your imagination, wishful thinking. And the person that you thought you were married to was fictional, because the person who you split up from bore no relation to the person you thought you had married. And this is a common theme that survivors have. And that actually that he didn't exist at all, it was all in your head. And this is further exacerbated by the appalling post-separation abuse that you might also be experiencing. It's almost like a doubling down of the pain. It can be crippling, and it's really hard for other people to understand this. You know, why would you feel grief for someone that treated you like that? And this can also leave you feeling unsupported through this experience, feeling minimised, and people might also even just tell you to get over it. You've got your life back now. What's all the fuss about? But it feels completely overwhelming to you, and those feelings are real. So here are some of the stages that may help you to direct your own healing through this very difficult and challenging time. And I've used the roadmap for this that helped me get through exactly the things I'm talking about in this video in my own recovery and transformation. So I do hope it will help you too. Okay, firstly, the way to relieve yourself of this heavy emotional burden is to allow yourself to feel the pain of the grief as fully and as completely as you can. And nobody's ever taught us how to do this. So give yourself some dedicated time on your own, sit with these feelings. Journaling can help too to get the process started. And if it's difficult to record or difficult to find that emotional pain, because we tend to suppress pain like this, so what we're doing now is we're allowing ourselves permission for the pain to come up, and maybe recounting a time that is particularly a particularly painful memory might help to do this. I was fortunate that I had a healing toolkit that I could help me through this process. So I was using quantum freedom healings, emotional freedom technique is a really good one, tapping, and breath work are really good for helping you manage these emotional triggers, but we must feel them to heal them. So it's really important for you to surrender into this process and allow these feelings to surface. If it feels physical and if it feels physically painful, it's because it is. The grief will feel like a physical pain in your body, and it might not be pretty, but however that pain needs to be felt, allow it to come out. Whether it's screaming, whether it's crying, whether it's shouting, just let it out. Don't hold back, because it has to be felt. Right? Has to be felt till it stops hurting. And once you've allowed this feeling to come out, and you've got some healing tools on hand to help you process, once you felt it, it doesn't feel so bad. It really doesn't. And it can be, for me, it was over and done with quite quickly. But I want you to, even though it's a scary moment, I want you to reassure yourself that you are doing this with the express intention of feeling it to allow the grief to move out of your body. And once the pain has been allowed to express, you will feel immediate relief. So the second thing that can help you is that at some level we have to accept the reality of our losses. And this is really hard because some losses are easier to accept than others. Maybe there are some heavy physical losses as well as a sense of loss of love, sanity, youth, optimism, reputation. You know, you could write your own list, couldn't you, of things that are really hard to accept about what's happened to you. And, you know, I would encourage you to just introspect a little bit and maybe compile a list, because that you will have some feeling and some grief on each aspect of that list. So you can't just think it away with your conscious mind. You can't tell yourself something better, although better self-talk does help in lots of ways. It's not going to heal these really deep stuck feelings in your body. So you can't just sort of say, I'm going to let all this go. It doesn't work. How I managed to get on, how I managed to get to move on from these losses was self-forgiveness, or more accurately, self-compassion, which is kindness in action directed towards ourselves. I'm just going to mention at this point, I don't advocate forgiving the abuser. A lot of people do. For me, that's irrelevant. We have to forgive ourselves for allowing things to happen. We have to offer kindness to ourselves as an absolute priority, and that is the priority. So that's something to tap into to help you through this process. And of course, we didn't unknowingly allow all of these horrible things to happen. They happened. It wasn't our fault, but now we're going to let ourselves off the hook for perhaps making mistakes of judgment, errors of judgment, or anything that you are beating yourself up about. Maybe you didn't see the red flags, or you ignored red flags. Anything to do with that, any self-reproach on this subject, you need to start letting yourself off the hook, because none of what happened to you is your fault. But we're in this process of repairing ourselves, and we have to accept what's happened, and we also have to forgive ourselves. We have to show compassion and kindness to ourselves. We've probably never been shown that before. So now is a time to learn how to develop this sense of compassion and direct it towards ourselves. And in my own recovery, I knew this was really important, that if I was going to create a happier life, which is what I was focused on, I wasn't going to bury feelings. I wasn't going to push them aside. I was going to feel them and learn how to deal with them, so that I could actually create a happier life from the inside out. And it was part of the learning process, because I came from a family where nobody had the first idea how to manage their emotions. So I had to teach myself, and this is part of the process. So all the feelings that were coming up as a result of the grief and the loss were part of the old life, my old life, and they embodied the energy of that old life. And it's not something I wanted to bring with me into my new life. It's something that I wanted to process and move out of my body. And just on this point, if you were wondering what I'm talking about, processing healings, processing traumas out of our body, and breath work and freedom technique, please just research somatic healing and breath work, and get yourself knowledgeable about these tools of trauma processing, because they will really help you. So number 3, we're trying to create a new life, and surely it's got to be better than it was before. So having accepted all the things that went wrong, or all the horrible things that happened, and allowing ourselves self-forgiveness on these things, we need to move this sense of grief out of our body, because we'll drag it around with us for years. And I know for a fact, from talking to people who've lived through this situation, that quite often these feelings of grief, because they've not been processed, people are dragging around these horrible emotional burdens for decades after a narcissistic abuse split. And I don't want that for you. I didn't want it for me. I wanted to get on with my life. I didn't want to I wanted to deal with everything properly and move on. And so what we have to do is commit to processing this grief, so that we can move on to the next step of our transformation, because that's what this process is all about. And people are scared of these heavy emotions, but when we process them and allow them to move out of our body, we're creating incredible amounts of space in our being and in our lives. When you create spaciousness like this, and you're operating from a place of love and compassion, not sadness and fear and all the old stuff, you're going to be able to attract better things into your life. It's a little bit like doing emotional spring cleaning, but on a big scale, because obviously grief and loss is a very serious emotional burden. So we need to, and they're like blocking your happiness and they're blocking your sense of joy. So we can get through them, we can clear them out of our system, and we can create some space for feeling better things and for creating a better life. And from this sense of emotional spaciousness, it allows us time to think about what we really want, which is absolutely essential for getting our transformation and repairing ourselves better than we were before. We need to be focused on how we want to live and free from all the yuck and the emotional burden of an old life with the narcissist. And the other thing we need to bear in mind is that if we don't process these heavy feelings of loss and grief, our mind will focus on all the things we've lost, and it will focus on all these heavy feelings of grief, and that will, again, it's a block. It will keep us stuck, but it will keep us feeling like we're in this permanent state of loss, and it doesn't need to be like that. And we'll also create what we're focused on as well. So what we focus on, we create. What we think, we become. So that's why it's so important to clear these feelings of grief and loss about the narcissistic relationship out of our system for good, so that we're not preoccupied in our thoughts about what we think we've lost, because actually we've got an awful lot to gain if we can move through this grief process successfully. So the other thing that can happen is when we're stuck in grief and with these pervasive feelings of loss, our attention turns to the person, the perpetrator, the abuser, and it keeps us stuck in victim mode, and it gives power to them as well, even though we may not be living with them. We disempower ourselves by thinking that way, and that's why in our recovery and in our transformation we have to keep the focus on ourselves. There's no other way of getting through this, and that's another important reason why we have to focus on healing grief, loss and trauma from our being, is so that we can now start to move on and create an amazing life. And being able to do this process with the tools and with the protocols I've explained is another aspect to showing up for yourself and advocating for yourself. And that's an expression of self-love. Self-compassion is an expression of self-love. And once you start advocating for yourself and acting in your own best interests, that means nursing yourself through this very difficult period, then you're going to find that your quality of life improves very, very quickly. So your quality of life will dramatically improve. And from this very important transitional moment of your life, you're in a very powerful position to actually change your life trajectory just with your thoughts. So it is a challenge to move through these grief processes, and the first two especially, but it is very necessary, because like me, I managed to get my life back on track pretty quickly, about 6 months after the split, and I want that for you too. I don't want you to stay stuck in the world of narcissism and abuse. We want to look forward to a much better standard for ourselves and a much better quality of life, because I think we owe ourselves that, and we can create it. We're just learning a very, very tough lesson, but once we get it, our life will just open up. And I hope this video helps you. Please do get in touch, like and subscribe, drop some comments if you want, and I will reply to them. You can get in touch with me as well through my other social media links. I'll see you in the next video.